Hey there, and welcome to another Coffee with Colm, and thanks very much for tuning in. The objective, if this is your first time joining us for Coffee with Colm, the objective is where I take elements of my business journey as chronicled in the book Feeding Johnny, How to Build a Business Despite the Roadblocks. I take snippets from that and discuss them on a weekly basis over a cup of coffee for about 5 minutes or so, and outline some of the lessons contained in the snippet. And the objective is so that by me sharing elements of my journey, perhaps I can afford you a shortcut where back in the day I didn't have one. This week I want to talk about getting good people on your team, and to do that I want to tell you a couple of quick stories if I may. First one revolves around a fellow called Brian Meehan, and Brian works with me here in Carambola as the finance director. And Brian is a detail fanatic, and it's fair to say that I'm not. So Brian has learned to use his strengths to complement mine. He couldn't do what I do, and I couldn't, nor would I want to do what he does. But he's brilliant at what he does, and more importantly in terms of a team, he's learned how to take what he does and then package it in such a way that it makes me and my style of operating makes it easy for me to understand the information and to make decisions. So Brian will take a piece that Carambola is looking at, usually a finance piece of some sort, and he'd go away and he'd do some analysis, and he'd come back to me and say, Colm, I had a look at that issue, and I see three possible things we can do. We can do A, the upside will be blah, the downside will be blah blah. We could do B, the upside is blah blah blah, downside blah 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 blah. We could do C, the upside is blah blah blah, downside blah 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 blah. And I recommend we go with option B, sign here. And that's beautiful for somebody like me, because I know Brian, I trust him, we've been working together for a long time, so he's done the analysis, I don't have to second guess him, and if he puts a piece of paper in front of me and says sign here, I usually do. Now that's a wonderful synergy to have, people using their strengths to complement each other, and the business moves forward as a result. The second story I want to tell you about is when our son Stephen was involved with Mary Immaculate College, the Dramatic and Art Society there, Midas, and every year they put on a musical show, fantastic musical show usually, and in recent times one of the shows was definitely worthy of the West End, no question, fantastic. We were there on the last night, and of course the last night is when, you know, at curtain call, you have the usual stuff where the chorus line come out and they get their bula bus, they get their applause, and then as the applause gets louder, as the more involved characters come, and of course there's usually the comedic characters that get a good laugh and thunderous applause, and then it builds and builds and builds until the leads have come on and taken their bow. But on the last night, what they tend to do is they tend to call all the backstage people on and thank them for being involved in the show. And what I noticed was, firstly, the backstage people are typically like fish out of water. You bring them in, put them in front of the spotlight, and they're thinking, my goodness, this is, you know, the worst thing that could happen to me. And it struck me that there are two very different types of individual here. There are front of house people, and they are absolutely necessary. You can't have a show without them. You also can't have a business without them. And there are back of house people, and they're equally as necessary, and you can't have a show without them, and you can't have a business without them. And the important thing is to figure out, well, who's a backstage person, who's a back of house person, and who's a front of house person. And interestingly, if you take the musical analogy, all of those people were volunteers, and they would have volunteered based on their view of themselves. You know, somebody wanted to be a costume designer because they're not comfortable in the spotlight, and somebody else wanted to be front and center because that's the only place they're comfortable. And what's wonderful about something like that is when everybody plays to their strengths, you end up with a show worthy of the West End. And in terms of business, when people play to their strengths, when you've got great front of house people out there making sales and meeting customers and throwing orders over their shoulders, and you've got great back of house people who are catching those orders and making sure that they deliver on time and in full with zero defects, then you've got something that's synergistic. And of course, on top of all that, you need quality management. That the show needed a producer and it needed a director, and businesses need producers, for want of a term, and they need directors. They need a board, they need people to make decisions, and they need somebody leading the charge. And there's an absolute synergy between those, between that show that I saw in Mary Immaculate College and the business world today. But there are some of you out there, I'm sure, that are saying, but Colm, that's lovely. You have a team around you. I'm a one-man band. I work for myself. I get up in the morning, I answer the phone, I take the order, I drive off in my van, I do the deliveries, etc., etc., etc. I package all the goods myself, and therefore it's just me, and that's all lovely talk about teamwork, but I don't have a team. Well, my friend, if you are what you term a one-man band, if it's just you in your business, and it is in fact just you taking the orders and answering the phone and driving the van and doing the deliveries and doing all that stuff, I understand how you might consider you're a one-man band, but I'm here to tell you you're not. Even if it's just you that's being paid by your business, or indeed if it's a startup, you might not even being paid by your business at this moment in time. But if it's just you involved in your business, you've got to think of all the other people around you that are actually part of your team, and that includes your spouse, who's putting up with your moods as you go out there and build your business. You've got your children who are being supportive in some shape or form. They're perhaps being good and being quiet while daddy's on the phone or mommy's on the phone. You have a bank manager, part of your team. You've got somebody who's provided you with phone service, part of your team. You've got somebody who maintains your van, part of your team. So just because you're a one-man band does not mean that you operate alone. And that famous acronym TEAM, T-E-A-M, together everyone achieves more, is truer today than it ever was. Well, I hope you took something from that, and if you enjoyed it, feel free to pass it on. If it's your first time coming to us, pop to the homepage, ColinnO'BrienMotivation.com, and put your details in there. We send you more of this type of stuff on a regular basis. What I'd suggest you do, what I'd like you to do, is bear in mind some of the stuff that has been shared here today as you go through the next week or so, and use some of the stuff in there to inform some of your decisions in your particular business journey. And then most importantly, please come back next week and we share another coffee together, another coffee with Colin. So in the meantime, have a great week. Cheers. Keep the faith. I love coffee. Talk to you soon. Bye.